start with a piece of inspiration. I was asked by Co-Chair Lee to find someone to give a piece of inspiration, but then I was immediately found inspiration on my own. So I'll read to you all a brief quote from Mutual Aid by Dean Spade. And this is on leadership qualities that support mutuality and collaboration. One thing we need to do to create strong, sustainable mutual aid projects is shed the baggage of what we are told leadership is in a racist, colonial, patriarchal society. That model is usually about individuality, competition, and domination. We often think of leaders as people in the spotlight, holding the mic. To win big, we need to build leaderless and leaderful groups. This means we want lots and lots of people involved, all of whom are building skills that help them do the work and bring new people into the work. We want transparency in our groups. We want everyone to have the strength and skills to lead. So I think these themes will be coming up more as we get into our working groups, but just wanted to throw that out there. Hopefully we feel inspired to all feel empowered and all be leaders in this group. So with that, Mr. Montez, if you could please call the roll.
I was on mute. Lisa Pierce. All right. Joshua Samin. Sunali Sikand. Dina Allen. Woody Hastings.
Here.
All right. Kenna Lee.
Here.
Alex Goodman. All right. Sarah Elliott.
Here.
Gerald Glazer or Jerry Glazer.
I'm here.
Diana Rich.
Here.
Sarah Glade Gurney.
Here.
And Luke Lindenbush.
Here.
All right. We have a full house.
Thank you very much, Alan. So with that, we'll move to item number 3, approval of minutes. And there are none. So we will move to item number 4, comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public present at this time that would wish to speak? Yes. Eris, feel welcome to speak.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to let you all know about a campaign that we just launched this month that I think is very relevant to the work that you're doing with the climate action. We're calling it Bike to It with the numeral 2 in there. Given that transportation is such a large component of and driver of climate change, and 30% of trips in Sonoma County are 2 miles or less, which is very doable on a bike, in 15 minutes or so. So it's encouraging all these new people who have started biking since COVID to consider using their bike for any destinations, work, errands, school, recreation within 2 miles. And so what we would like to offer or ask of you is what other ways that we can partner or connect with it, as simple as putting out word about the campaign on any of your social media or websites or city communications. Both the climate action committees of Santa Rosa and Petaluma have posted some of our information on their websites, guides to things citizens can do. You can join yourself. There's, let's see, where's my list of other things? We've also got some posters and flyers and things like that that we're putting together. And I know that sort of thing is difficult right now with COVID, but if there are places that can be put up, we would love to share those materials with you. And I'll put the link to the campaign in the chat so everybody has access to it. I know Sebastopol's, I've heard from Sarah's got your Walk to It campaign for also getting people to walk in the downtown area. So this is maybe spreading it out a little bit more. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Eris, for your public comment. Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment at this time? Seeing none, we will close the public comment period at this time. Alan, did we receive any public comments in writing?
So the only public comment that we'd received was from Eris, and I think she just did an excellent job explaining her comment.
Excellent, thank you very much. Now we'll open it up to the committee to respond. First, Joshua.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Luke. I just wanted to say that previously approval of minutes has been sort of a review of action items that came from the previous meeting, and that's a piece that I've tended to hold. So if you don't mind, can I just spend a minute on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We can, let's just get any further comments on the public comment, and then we can go back and reopen item number 3, if that sounds okay. So Sarah, if you have your comment. You're on mute.
I'm catching up with you and catching up with Eris too. She did mention to our adaptation of the Bicycle Coalition program. It's called Walk to It. And I just sent everybody the map that Kathy Ottinger, one of our planning commissioners, designed, also one of our volunteers on the Sebastopol Walks program. The notion is when you look at that map, you're going to see the center of town. The geographic center is in the intersection between Parkside School and the fire station. And you'll see the half-mile radius from that point and the 1 mile radius. A 1 mile walk from there will get you to Belmont Terrace beyond O'Reilly, to the north, to the west to Atascadero Creek, to the south almost to Enmanji Temple, and out to the Laguna Trail to the east. So the map really highlights what a very small city we are geographically. The impression was that Sebastopol is hilly with a largely elder population, perfect for electric bikes. Eris, we're going to work on that with you. And in the meanwhile, people might want to pledge to walk on their local errands. As Eris is promoting riding your bike 2 miles, this promotion is to walk up to 1 mile for your trip to the bank, the post office, the grocery store, wherever you're going. So check out the map. It's really lovely and very informative. Thank you
very much, Sarah.
Yeah.
Woody?
Thanks. It's just a basic question of, it sounds to me from what Councilmember Gurney just said that the basic answer is yes, that the city is ready and willing to sort of help amplify the program and help spread the word. Is that the case? Is that, and that's what you're basically asking, is it not, Eric? That the city would help spread, share information about the program. I see a thumbs up, so maybe that's the answer. If there's anything further, I mean, I volunteered last session to join the transportation committee. So if there's anything else on, working with the Bike Coalition and whatnot, be happy to help on that.
Thank you very much, Woody. Any other members of the committee wish to respond to public comment at this time? Kenna?
Yeah, I'll just say, Eris, we're a new group, and so we're getting our working committees together today. And one of those is going to be our public outreach and education committee. And so hopefully transportation will take pieces of this on, and then education outreach for things like, just publicizing your initiative, which sounds great, and even doing it in conjunction with the walk to it. It could work well. So we're getting ourselves moving on that stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any further? Okay, with that, we'll close comments from the public and go back to reopen item number 3. If there's no objection, approval of the minutes, so Joshua can go over action items.
Great, thanks, Luke. So just a quick review of sort of what we said we would do last time. Alan and I were going to get together on the working groups and sort of summarize the list, and people had expressed interest in that, put that out in a handout. Hopefully you all got that with the agenda. And for everybody was going to review the working group priorities for themselves and also the CAP situation. Both of those are going to be agenda items coming up shortly. And there was a final piece there where Lisa was interested in beginning to prepare a resolution for the City Council to in support of the REACH code and Title 24. And I have to confess that we had a fumble on the part of the facilitation committee and not quite getting that on the agenda for today's meeting. We will be addressing that at the next meeting. That's it.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Lisa?
Well, it turns out that was actually more my goof, because I sent it in to you guys after the Tuesday deadline. So I looked at my notes later and I realized anything that goes out needs to get to Alan before Tuesday before the meeting. So I'm learning. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lisa. Any further comments on this item before we move along? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5, statements of conflict of interest. Are there any committee members with any statements of conflict of interest on agenda items today? Seeing none, we will move into item number 6, our regular agenda. Item A will be handled by Kenna, an update on the Mobility Action Plan workshop.
Yeah, so this is just a short announcement of an opportunity that exists, and some of you may have also received information about this, but it seemed like the timing was possibly good. There's a 3-day workshop happening in March called From Mobilize You, where you create a mobility action plan for your city. So if there's anyone that is interested in, I will drop that information into the chat, and that's just there. If anyone is interested, you do need recommendations in order to enroll. So I'm happy to assist with providing those. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Kenna. Any question from the committee? All right, with that, and are there any comments from members of the public on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item 6B, working group assignments to be facilitated by Josh O.
Great, thanks again, Luke. So as mentioned, I did try to summarize where we were standing last time with respect to the working groups. I'm sorry that the conversation got a little rushed and cramped last time. Certainly we need to figure this out well, so I hope we have a little bit more space this time. Just rather than asking if everybody got the handout, I would say, is there anybody who didn't get the handout and is at all in doubt about where we're starting the discussion at this point? Okay, so far so good, great. So to review some of the general principles, we are looking for working groups of a moderate number of members that has to be less than a quorum of the whole committee. A quorum of the whole committee is 6. So any number from 2 to 5 is great for a working group. There is a limitation that if the working groups are meeting in between, they can't extend communications to other members of the whole committee such that that would constitute a quorum, because we have to have our committee quorum only in these meetings at whatever interval that is at. So just a reminder there's only a couple of groups that are a large size where that might come up in practice. Essentially, working groups are going to be free to set their own agendas and process and task lists to a certain extent and report back to the whole committee for approval and guidance and responses and that sort of thing. To a certain extent, when more of our work shifts into the working groups, we may be meeting less in the whole committee, less frequently, that is, to allow the working groups time to make progress in between. And in general, we're going to shoot for some shared values that our priorities and our proposals should be feasible, have some kind of quantifiable or measurable impact, should consider social equity and the prospect of transferable models that other cities and situations could use. So far, so good, everyone? Okay, so where it stood last time was that we ended up with a list of 9 potential working groups. In the interim, a motion has come up to combine the Climate Action Plan Working Group, which had consisted of myself and Jerry, and the Models and Metrics Working Group, which was Kenna, Luke, and Jerry, which is to say, we're now looking at sort of a climate action plan steering committee, if you will, of the 4 of us. And we still propose that there will be several other working groups. Another thing about the other working groups is that you may be asked periodically to address something that's within your stated area of focus and report back to the whole in a way. Similarly, the climate action plan is probably going to require input from all of the working groups in some fashion. And so there will be an interaction between the climate action plan umbrella and the various initiatives of the various working groups. That said, we do want the groups to feel free to have their own volition and to generate their own process. And we're also hoping that in between this meeting and the next meeting, that each of the working groups can have an initial meeting to just check in and start to formulate their perspective. So far so good. Everybody as well? Okay. I basically say, start waving your hand around if you need to pause and I will try to notice that and bring you into the discussion as well. So I'm now going to go and review the list of the working groups that we had and see if that all sounds good for people. As it stands now, several people are in multiple working groups, so you'll need to evaluate for yourself how many groups seems feasible for you and just make sure that commitment seems reasonable. And if there's a possibility that we might merge some of these groups in a pinch, but let's just initially start with going through the list and seeing if what we said last time still sounds good. So the first mentioned group, these are in no particular order, incidentally, was funding. On that front, we had Lisa, Luke, and Woody express interest. So you three, are you all still interested in that subject?
Yeah, I am. And in fact, I would say that's the main one that I'm interested in. And yeah, I, for sure want to stay in it.
Great. Luke, was that something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I am still interested. I'm also in a number of these working groups. So just wanted to do a temperature check with Lisa and Woody. Would you feel confident taking on as your own? And if I'm kind of the chair group liaison, sort of an alternate, is that okay? Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Great. Just while we're on sort of the working items for that group, we sort of decided that we would ask one person from each committee or working group to be the point person, if you will, for establishing a meeting of that group before our next committee meeting in 2 weeks from today. Can one of the three of you sort of be in charge of coordinating and putting together the Zoom link, that sort of thing? Lisa, is it you feel like you can take that on? Great, thanks so much. Okay, moving on. The next one was research, by which we meant essentially that item that we'd inherited from the city council saying that our group should look for modeling to other groups and other efforts that are doing similar things in other cities and other places. On the research front, Luke and Diana expressed interest in that. Does that still stand for you two? And I noticed that that's a little bit light. Is there anybody else who is similarly interested in that front who might want to pitch in? Sarah, interested in being on that one? Great.
Yes, actually, I would like to. And I've already been doing some of that. I didn't realize I wasn't officially in that role.
Okay.
You are now.
I am.
Just a quick comment on the research piece. I just want to recognize that our research, what other cities are doing, is probably going to overlap into other areas. So, we'll just have to be nimble, today's word.
Certainly. Great. Would one of the three of you be so kind as to take point on arranging a meeting for your working group within the next couple of weeks?
Yes.
Luke, thank you.
We were going to volunteer Luke if he didn't.
I do have to say that Luke initially signed up for 5 working groups, so everybody be nice to him and let's let him back off a little bit if possible. But, okay, moving on. Outreach and education. This one is the most popular. We have Dina, Lisa, Sarah, Sunali, and Alex all expressed interest in that. Does that sound good to all 5 of you so far? Great. Great. Okay. All right. Wonderful. I think We can probably talk towards the end of this summary about the potential suggested, tasks or missions related to these groups. But just to say, we've already noticed that on the education front, there are lots of things that are already existing that we don't really have a way to do outreach about. So you guys are welcome to hit the ground running in terms of just figuring out how we can get the word out about the things that are already happening is a great place to start. And of those 5 there, Dina, Lisa, Sarah, Elliot, Sunali, and Alex, can one of you take point in terms of organizing a meeting for that working group in the next 2 weeks? Alex, thank you. Okay.
I'm happy to do so. No problem.
Great.
Also, can I ask a question related to the outreach group?
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I've been looking at from the chair role is just trying to make the existence of our committee and the fact that we're running and the fact that we're having meetings that are open to the public more visible. And I don't know if the outreach committee wants to take that piece on or if that's something that you'd rather I keep. So I think you guys are nodding and saying you're going to take that part on. Yes? Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, everyone. That's really going to be helpful. Okay, next working group proposed was microgrids and energy. And we had Jerry, Lisa, and Kenna express interest in that one. Does that still stand for you 3? Lisa, yes. Jerry, yes. Kenna, great. Okay. Would one of the 3 of you be so kind as to take point on organizing a meeting for your working group?
I can do that. Lisa's already taken one and I'm hoping Jerry's going to claim the cap. So.
Okay. Great. I should say that agreeing to take point at this meeting doesn't mean you're the leader of the working group for here on out. This is just a practical step for the immediate future. Okay, next up, transportation. We had Luke, Woody, and Alex express interest in that one. Does that sound good?
What I would say on this one is what you just said, express interest. I mean, I'm interested in it, yeah, probably interested in all of them, but I guess I put my name on it because when we were coming up with them last time, it didn't look like people were signing up. So I just wanted to make sure it had some people. I'm willing to stay on there. I just don't, I think I can really only probably handle actively working on one. And that's the first one, the funding. I'm happy to help to the extent that I can on the transportation one though, so I can stay on there.
Yes.
Me too.
Okay, great. I was
Me
just
too.
going to ask because I know we had a lot of interest from the council members last time. So I'll add Sarah. Okay. And could one of the 4 of you take point on organizing a meeting for the next time? Luke, thank you. All right. Next one, yes, we have models and metrics, Cantaloupe Jerry, and climate action plan Jerry and Josho. As we've discussed in between, that we're talking about merging those groups, and that in a certain way will be, we're not the only people who'll be working on the revamped climate action plan, but attempting to steer the overall effort in some fashion and eliciting periodic help from everybody else within your areas of focus. So far, so good on that. Could one of us take a point on organizing that meeting?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Great, thank you, Jerry.
For Zeno and I think also Diana, Diana, you're a representative of RCPA?
Sarah is on the.
Oh, Sarah is, okay.
Yes, I'm the alternate, or
Okay.
no. Anyway, Sarah is.
Okay, is part of that work, we'll want to be able to tap you or Zeno to find out what's going on there, because that's part of the CAP as well.
That makes sense.
Okay, next up, sequestration. We had Joshua, Dina, Sarah, and Sunali on that one. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure which Sarah that was. Great, Sarah Elliott. Okay, thank you. Are we all okay with that? And would anybody, myself included, like to organize the meeting in between? Okay, I guess that's me. I will take point in organizing a meeting on there. All right. And finally, the social equity group there, Woody, Kenna, and myself expressed interest. Unfortunately for me, I feel like I'm maxing out on committees, so I feel that I need to withdraw from that one, having 3 others going so far. So that leaves Woody and Kenna. I'm not, I offer you the option of carrying through with that as a working group. We also could keep social equity as sort of a litmus test or a general priority that we apply to all of our proposals along the way. I don't want to dictate the decision on this. I'm just noticing that we are, let's start with Woody, since you are on that one.
Thanks. Yeah, and this is another one where I put my name on it because I was, want to make sure that it had some people, but also I think I also mentioned last time what you just said, which is that I think it'd be good if each committee could make part of its lens or part of its sort of principles that it sort of, abides by. One of them would be, as you're looking at outreach and education, as you're looking at energy microgrids, as you're looking at transportation, all of them include social equity, environmental justice, institutional racism, as part of what you're looking at, and that you wouldn't want to promote some kind of program or project that really does not help advance social equity. So that would be my thought, is that we not have a separate committee, but that it's infused in all of the committees.
Okay. Jerry, did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I do, and I totally agree with Woody, and in other papers that have been written lately, I've made the same comment that the work that we're doing is on climate, and that one of the measures that we have is that measure that social equity is not just maintained, it's supported, and that becomes one of the metrics. There's a bunch of other metrics that should be there too, measures that we look at any one of the actions that occur, and that's a very strong one. And I don't think it looks for separate plans. It becomes a measurement.
Okay. So it seems that what we're leaning towards here is eliminating social equity.
There's 2 hands up.
Oh,
Diana, yes.
Well, actually, who was first? Was it Sarah and then Ken and then me? I think we all have our electronic hands up.
Oh, yes. There
I'll yield to anybody and go last.
Okay, then I'll speak up here. I just wanted to recognize that probably a lot of these overall factors that are going to come up, social equity and other priorities, are probably going to bubble to the top through the development of the climate action plan that will be worked on here. The Petaluma format identified equity and those sorts of things. So I think we're going to see that develop, and I would agree that it doesn't need a separate committee. It just needs an awareness, but needs to be articulated somewhere, probably in the climate action plan.
And Sarah or Kenna?
I'll go ahead. I'm going to play the devil's advocate here and say that although I don't think we need an necessarily ongoing social equity committee, having a framework or a tool that we're using, that all the different committees are using one standard set of reference to evaluate the social equity impact of things could be more helpful than just us all having it in mind. So my thinking about that committee would be that it would be a very short-term ad hoc, find some tools, find some frameworks to bring back to the group or recommend to the group and say, can we use these as our measurement or as our framework moving forward, so that we have something that's just a little bit more formal.
My initial response to that, Ken, is that might fall within the realm of metrics that you and I are already dealing with as part of the CAP committee as well. Could you see that as an offshoot of that committee's group to sort of propose an evaluative framework?
You could. I mean, it's one way of looking at it. It's a separate. It's not the same in my mind as the kind of metrics that we would be doing as part of the CAP, but I want to let Sarah speak since she's been waiting.
Absolutely. Sarah?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to point out a little while ago this afternoon, I forwarded the information about what's happening in Petaluma, because remember, I'm the new person on the research task force, and they're creating an equitable climate action coalition. 6 months of work, I think, really to develop the framework as Kenna was speaking. And they have an $1,800 stipend for the people who are chosen through an application process. So that's in your email box if you are interested in looking at it.
Certainly. Diana?
Yeah, I just want to say that to the extent that the group decides to retain the social equity category, I'd be happy to work with Kenna on that topic.
All right. Jerry?
Yeah, the only point would make is problem with our format here. Ken and I have talked about this too. I wanted to talk about it as far as a metric, and I think it doesn't fit as a metric because it ends up being, if it was done the way I would do it, I'd have questions. You'd have 5 questions that you would ask. You know, identify the ill effects of such and such an action on various communities. I mean, you come up with the 5 questions and you apply those questions to every one of the actions or policies that we might come up with. And you're required to answer the question. And that would be the best way to handle it from my point of view.
Sure. I think there's different points of view as to whether a metric is strictly something that's quantified or whether it's also an evaluative framework. However we're able to proceed is great. I might suggest further that perhaps social equity is not actually the expertise of this overall committee, and that we might do some outreach to try to find local representatives from local organizations who are engaged very much in social equity and could help us to ask those questions or establish that framework. Dina, I see your hand up, and certainly any other comments on this are welcome as well.
Oh, I was to add on what you just said. It was the direction I was thinking. What Sarah sent from Petaluma, they were asking for more diverse people, and so that is definitely getting diversity in the final matrix or guidelines or questions or whatever would probably be smarter than just a bunch of the same olds.
Okay, so in the interest of just moving along with practical items here, I'm unclear as to whether we sort of talked ourselves out of there being a working group on social equity, or whether a couple of people still want to try to move in the interim towards a little more research or a little more of an evaluative matrix on that. Yes, Kenna.
Well, I feel like Diana and I are both interested in working on this outside of the meeting, and so we might as well be a working group to work on it. It sounds like there's a lot of ideas and input and a desire on the part of this committee to do some real work around it, and so having us have a place for people to park that, send resources to, etc., can be helpful.
Okay, great. So
and can we, at the end of this, Joshua, once you're kind of towards the end, there's a couple of questions I want to ask to the group. So just let me know.
Absolutely. All right. So I think what we got here is that Kenna and Diana will initially take point on trying to take us further as a whole on the social equity evaluation and process. Woody, yes.
Just saying that I'm going to stay on that, especially since it sounds like it's an ad hoc that's going to sunset once its quick work is done. So yes, consider me in that committee. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And just to follow the format we have been so far, would one of the three of you care to take point on organizing your working group meeting?
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Diana. Okay. All right, so congratulations, everybody. We are close to completed with this part of it, and I really look forward to seeing the working group process unfold. As a reminder, each of you is trying to meet once in between now and our next full committee meeting, which is to say 2 weeks from today. And a good part of that meeting, I believe, will be time for each group to report back with a summary, and probably that process of the working groups checking in will be an ongoing part of all of our committee meetings from here on out. Yes, Lisa.
So this is a general question that we might be getting to anyway, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't totally leave the topic. So how do we, if there's probably a wealth of information that all of us have to share with other groups. You know, I'm just thinking of like the research committee, you know, there's a bunch of stuff I'd love to pass on about what other places are doing. How would that work? Would that be, would it be kosher on Brown Act for me to send stuff to the point person to distribute within the group, or how does that work?
Diana, are you wanting to respond to that question?
Just to pitch in, I recall a conversation when Larry McLaughlin was giving his, yeah, Alan, I'm looking at you, was giving his presentation on the Brown Act. It sounded like there had been a question about whether documents could be sent to Alan that would be a document library that then we could all access independently. So we'd have those research documents available to us, but we wouldn't be discussing them. Would that meet those goals, Lisa? And Alan, is that something that you in fact could facilitate for us?
Yes, and what I would like to do with that is using our climate action webpage as kind of a document library as well. So that's where all the information will be stored and also public. And I believe my intention is to add a document library like tab section onto it as well. So that's my intention. With
that, could we put like notes and a link, or could we do something like that, just so to call attention to, so people would notice things from a certain group? I don't know.
So I'm not sure about that, but what my thought would be is you had a meeting, if you want to report out your information, you can say, if you go to the document library, you can find our research studies or the white papers that we found and researched or anything like that. Or, you know, you can always add a meeting, you can always attach any documents as well. So if you're contacting Luke, Joshua, or Kenna regarding an item you want on the agenda, you know, you can always include attachments such as any papers or documents you want to just, you know, disseminate throughout the group.
I guess just to contribute here to the discussion, the nature of the comments and links would determine, I think, and Sarah can probably help us with this, whether it's a Brown Act violation. So for instance, if you went through the Petaluma climate framework, if someone went through that and they highlighted in yellow every time the word equity is mentioned, I don't see that every time the word sequestration is mentioned in another color. I don't see that as a Brown Act violation. It's if you're putting commentary or persuasive content that we get into problems. But, you know, Sarah and I and Alan can keep an eye on those documents as they're being uploaded. And, you know, it's a learning process. You're not going to get wiped off the face of the earth if you make a mistake. But, you know, that's kind of the boundaries, I would think. Sarah, did I miss anything there?
I think that's just right. And we can also remember that the Brown Act applies to agendized business. So if that particular subject isn't on the agenda and you're sharing information, I think the commentary could be a little more free flowing.
Yeah, the problem is that if it's ever agendized, then it becomes a problem. So it can be after the fact. So you have to be careful.
Well, and the other problem is, like, so much of this is related. And right now, when we're all finding our way to what we want to do, it's hard to avoid that problem of it all being connected and creating issues. So I think care is warranted, like Diana was suggesting.
Alan, I think if you check with Larry, you might find out as long as you post it in the public place that's available to everybody, that we're
Right.
pretty safe. It's the fact that people have to be able to see it and it's not hidden. And we're not having a discussion amongst ourselves that nobody else knows
Offline.
about, as long as they know about it.
Yeah, and I love this idea, but we're kind of creating, what a great idea. It's like a research library that could be very useful to many people outside the immediate needs of this group.
And just to remind folks that each committee can expect to have some time each working group can expect to have some time in future committee meetings to specifically ask the rest of the committee for input on their subjects, so that there should be some healthy interchange between the parts and the whole. We just have to limit our talking offline about such subjects in a way that would advance them outside of the public meetings. All right.
Can we, I'm sorry, I just have a few more questions about this issue of how the working groups interact with Brown Act and Alan and us. Because I guess I thought that we couldn't send out any email to the whole group. Like Sarah, clearly you understand Brown Act better than I do. So I didn't think we could send an email like saying, here's the Petaluma plan to the whole group between meetings without that being something that was explicitly at the meeting. And I feel like breaking into working groups is going to make us all a little bit more like, you know, we're getting to business. And so we find things. And so like the mobility action plan, is that something that would have been okay to just send out to everybody as long as I don't comment on it or just say, here's an opportunity? Or do we need to put those things on the agenda? You know, if Alex wants to talk to me about the outreach group, what they're going to take up, do we need to do it in this meeting today? Or can we talk about that knowing there's 5 people on that committee?
Sarah, do you want to answer that or shall I?
Well, I'm going to say a little bit about it. It didn't occur to me that forwarding information that I got about an application process in Petaluma would violate the Brown Act. So maybe I'm wrong, and I'm willing to be corrected, Diana or Alan.
I
Let's
would
see.
have to check with Larry.
Yeah, we'll check with Larry. My thought,
I'm not worried about it, but yeah, we can check with Larry.
the problem with that, so the problem with that, Kenna, is what it can trigger. So it isn't that you send out a document to everyone on the committee. It's almost a reply all problem. So you send out that document and then, Jerry replies, wow, this looks like a really great idea. And it goes to reply all. And then Woody replies, oh, you know what? You might want to look at the Petaluma document. It's better. And then he forwards it to so if everyone follows the rule that you receive a document and then you don't then start discussing it, then you're going to be okay. But that is a really hard rule. Now, on the city council, we know that. Mary Gurley sends out a document to everyone on the city council. Let me tell you, there is no reply all. We all hold it, we review it. And to the extent that we are going to then discuss it in any way on email or in person or anything, we follow the Brown Act rules.
Yeah, and I've gone through multiple city attorneys and they wouldn't want us to do precisely that because you can't control it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what they'll basically come back and say, you're going to blow it. So don't do it. If you want to communicate, you send it to Alan. Alan figures out what can go out.
Yeah. And that's what on the city council we do. We generally will send something to Mary Gurley and then she will send it out. And to the extent that the city council people are speaking to one another, we stick to the Brown Act rules. We have our Brown Act buddies and that's it. So we have Alan as an opportunity, Kenna, any documents that we think are relevant to any of the discussions, we should share with him so that they can then be shared with the public and all of us can just get on that website and find them. To the extent you're in work groups, I mean, you should just stick with your work group discussions. And if you have a document that you want to share with everyone, send it to Alan. And you can even say to him, hey, Alan, can you email this to everyone? And then emails it to everyone and he posts it.
So I just didn't do that right during this meeting when Eris was talking. Jerry, you're laughing. I know, I did it. And I'm not worried about doing it because I just forwarded you information that's actually already published. So I think the important thing to remember is don't get to critical mass here and go over half of the group, and don't engage in those back and forth conversations as well.
And watch out for that reply all, because that's
Yes.
in trouble. Okay, are we,
Sorry.
at least for the present? Alan? Yes.
And what I would ask is if you ever want me to upload anything to the, the Climate Action Committee library, please just include that in the header that you want this uploaded there, or if you want me to send it out to the group, just let me know what you want me to do with it, just so I'm clear and concise.
Right, I think we just increased your workload, Alan, just so you're aware.
A little bit.
Okay.
All right, it's
Okay.
also going to go into Rebecca's workload.
So let's just talk through a couple of scenarios. So just so that we all are really clear on this. And I'm sorry if I'm being like super detail oriented. It's my nature. So we have Lisa is not on some committee, but that she finds a piece of information that she thinks would be useful to that committee, to their work, and she would like them to get that information. The best way for her to get that information to them is to send it to Alan, ask him to put it in the library. And then if we're just all sending things to Alan and he's putting things in the library, maybe we don't know that, Lisa sent this social equity thing that I really should have known was there. I'm probably not going to check the library 3 times a day to see if there's new things. So is there a mechanism, and I hate to put extra work on Alan, for, alerting someone else that there's new information in the library that pertains to their work group?
I think there are a couple of options. One would be that you simply ask Alan to forward it. The other one is you guys could decide that everything documents he just automatically forwards, or he may have a system for like Google Docs can alert you if another document is added on.
Right, I was going to say the same thing, but Alan, also the other thing you could do would make things a little bit safer. And if you do forward, and you're going to forward to all of us, do it as BCCs and don't do it as CCs. This way, none of us can do a reply all, or if we have a comment on it, it goes back to you and it goes no place else.
Yeah, I can make that happen.
Alan, what's the easiest way for you? Would you rather just have it be automatically every document that anyone gives you, you forward on? Or do you want each person to request that it be forwarded on?
So I think it'd be easier if it's requested, because if you want it added to the library, I actually don't have access to our website. I have to send it to Rebecca to then upload. If you want me to just forward it directly to, like the other day, Jerry forwarded me the document that'd be helpful for the transportation group. So after this meeting, since we got everything formalized, I'm going to be sending that over to them directly so they have an additional resource.
Okay, so in that case, Alan, you are sending it just to the transportation group?
Correct, because the document that Jerry had sent me is kind of a transportation focused piece. So I think it's just going to be going to those 4, I think it's 4 members.
Yeah, there's no reason why you can't send it to everybody, but that was the target.
Yeah, I don't think it would, we could send it to everyone, but I'm not sure if it's relevant necessarily.
Okay.
As a suggestion, in the longer term, we might consider having subfolders within the document library specific to each committee. And then before a committee has a meeting, they could just check their folder and see if anything new showed up.
Great.
All right. Are we good on the Brown Act as it refers to working groups? Okay.
There is in the chat, Joshua, I don't know, Woody put up that there is such a thing as a announce only Google group. And that just might be something that Alan, we talk more about offline, if that would be something helpful or not.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think how to coordinate that with the city website. Would be what I'm trying to think through in my head at the moment.
Okay. We can just take that under advisement.
Okay.
Woody has his hand up too.
I do, and I'm sorry I wanted to touch on this before we got off of the whole committee's piece, so I'll chime in now. It's a note that I took after the last session. I realized there's one more we might want to consider, which is that, so there's state policy. We're just getting going on the legislative season. And I'm aware of at least one bill that's specifically about providing state resources to local government, cities and counties. And so the question is around, can we make sure, or do folks feel that it's important to have some kind of, maybe it's the research, maybe it's the outreach education, I don't know. Maybe it can be folded into one of the existing committees, or do we need a committee if we agree that it's important to have an eye on state policy that impacts local government? That's the question. Just wanted to raise that. I thought this would probably be the best time to speak to it.
I see Jerry and Lisa.
I kind of pictured that as being part of the outreach and education, but it could be in the other one you just mentioned too. So, I mean, it seems like a very important piece to me that we obviously aren't going to ignore.
Woody, that one occurred to me as well when we left the last meeting, mainly because some of the things you've done in the past and some of the reading I did the last week again. I was going to suggest that it belongs with funding, because they both work through about the same institutions and looking at what's going on with legislation and funding at the same time. That might work out well.
Not wanting to speak for others, but it sort of fits in the research in terms of what other locations are doing on a similar front as well.
So I think it's either, personally, I'm on the research group. I understood research to be looking into what other entities, other jurisdictions are doing on the topic of climate action. To me, the legislative oversight awareness piece is a bigger picture, and I would think that it goes in education or funding, and maybe there's an overlap. The education and outreach, they need to be informed about what the legislative developments are in order to share that information with us and the rest of the public. And the funding group is going to instinctively be looking to funding. So just saying.
And just to jump back in again, because Woody, you're right. I mean, we shouldn't pass this over, because I think part of the job for the climate committee is basically to also send to the council, we advise that you support such and such legislation, write a note on this. And that's the reason that it should be here, and it should be actually be a good chunk of what we do.
Okay, so I'm gonna vote for the Education and Outreach Committee to take this on, because Lisa's already shown interest, and there are 5 people on that committee. So just saying.
Lisa, are you okay with that?
We need Woody. He's got his finger on the pulse.
Yeah. In my day job, I do pay a bit of attention to legislation. So consider me on tap as needed, and I'll provide information when I think there's something important for you to know.
However, just to note that the education group is at the max. So again, watch out for the
Good. I'm not saying I'm a member. I'm not a member of it. I'm just, yeah. Oh, I see. Even the communication that's important. So we'll be careful.
Okay, great. So hoping that we can begin to move towards closure on the general working group subject. I know there's going to be a couple more suggestions before we totally finish this one. A couple of notes that were sort of at the bottom of the pre-meeting handout on this. Just to say that some of the background documents that we got initially, including, for instance, the 2016 Climate Action Plan from RCPA and some recommendations from 2019 are a couple of years old at this point. And so people should, in general, keep looking ahead rather than behind. One of the biggest things that came out of that was, I feel like the older priorities were very much focused on emissions reduction. And newer priorities don't discount emissions production, but also looking at adaptation and resilience and social Woody, that those are more emergent priorities that we should also be taking in. So don't get, I mean, as a general advisement to all working groups, don't ignore the recommendations of the past, but don't get completely caught up in them either. We have a wider picture to look ahead with. And with that, I think, I know Kenna and potentially Luke had some suggestions to the working groups about things that they might consider in moving forward. Obviously, with just one meeting ahead, you can't cover everything, but if people have suggestions or things to think about within working group topics, let's take a couple of minutes now to cover those. Yes, Luke.
First off, I want to just ask if there's a motion to approve the working groups as amended.
Sounds good. Shall we have a show of hands in terms
I'll
of people?
make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, should we open it up to discussion? Do we want to go through the list again just to confirm that, or Joshua, do you feel you have a good handle on it?
I think, I mean, I was going to go back and review who in each group was and said that they would organize the following meeting. I don't know whether to do that now or whether to do that in the action item section, maybe the latter. Aside from that, I think it would be useful to just confirm with a show of hands, everybody who feels good about the working groups as they're laid out now and feels that we can move forward with that format. So all you're satisfied? Keep them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, as long as we got 7, I think we're pretty good. Any reservations about working groups, or anybody feel that they need to add anything on that front before we move forward?
Sorry, Josh, so does anyone object or abstain would be the two options? Just to try to get a count going.
Well, was that our vote on the motion? I thought that was kind of discussion.
Sorry about that. I may have misread that.
Is there a need for any further discussion, or do we feel we have consensus?
We have previously said if we have 7 votes and assent that we're generally okay with moving forward on things, though teasing out any objections is also a valued part of the process. Okay.
I think it was just confusing whether that was the formal vote on the motion or whether that was like a show of hands saying that we're all happy.
So maybe we'll have a formal vote on the motion. That would help all.
It was an informal vote on the motion. Let's have a formal vote on the motion. If you are happy with the working group thing, hold your hand up for a little while.
So
Looks unanimous.
Unanimous.
Okay.
I just voted, and I don't know if Diana and I are meant to be voting members of this group.
I think the two of you have one vote as it stands, is my understanding.
Yes. Well, if you are Diana, then I am. Just because we changed it up. Yeah. Okay.
So in the moving forward with the working group thing, and also just wrapping up with that, one suggestion I have on the transportation front was that we had identified some kind of ban on new fossil fuel development as one of the highest priorities from the Sebastopol climate action previous list that was way up at the top. And so I might suggest that the transportation working group might consider preparing some resolution to advance that subject on the city level. Just a suggestion. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That might be a moratorium pending an ordinance, I think is what you're suggesting.
The point was made at some point that moratorium is temporary by definition. And so there's a question of whether we can do something a little bit more. Not my job, just putting it out there.
Right. So that's my job. That's why I suggested a moratorium pending an ordinance.
Okay. And any other suggestions or commentaries on the working group front?
I would just love Sarah to clarify for those of us who aren't experienced in government what it means to say a moratorium pending an ordinance. Like,
oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I guess I speak in too much shorthand. So a moratorium is useful if you want to temporarily suspend an activity so that the council can consider whether it wants to permanently end that activity. And by law, they only last so long. I think it's 11 months. Somebody may know tighter details than me, and can only be extended once. So for instance, when the council wanted to consider a formula business ordinance, we put a moratorium in place and it was designed to prevent formula businesses from moving into a specific area you think of as the downtown core. And while that was in place, we were able to work with staff and draft an ordinance, because it takes time to research, write, revise, publicly review the ordinance, have hearings, and go back to a second reading and all of that. So the moratorium just puts everything on pause so that big subject can be considered. We also did a moratorium on the Airbnbs, the non-hosted Airbnbs.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Woody?
Yeah, I'll just chime in. That's fine. I mean, that's the model that the Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations that I work with is using, which is
Right.
get them all in place. That gives time to work out, dot the I's and cross the T's on what would become a permanent ban. Petaluma just went through. They had a moratorium for a while, and they just adopted a permanent prohibition 2 nights ago. So good model.
Right.
Just to fill in a procedural comment, Alan, who we will learn to really appreciate on this committee, is the person who will be assisting this committee in drafting things like moratoriums or staff reports or any proposals that get submitted to the city council. So just know that he's there for us when we get to that point.
Okay. All right. Any further comments on the working group subject before we move and launch?
Yeah.
Kenna.
I just wanted to give the education outreach group a chance to ask any questions of the larger committee, since they are the largest group that has the least wiggle room in terms of having outside discussions. And if there was any discussion that any members of that committee, or especially Alex, who's taking point this week, wanted to have previous to their first meeting. That sounds like a no. Oh, wait, I see Diana. Go ahead.
I would suggest that to the extent that any of us here have documents or information or links that might be relevant to the efforts of the Education and Outreach Committee. So for instance, if you know about pending legislation, if you have, samples, about other jurisdictions that have really cool education and outreach pieces, send them to Alan so that he can start populating that folder so that they can have those resources available. I think because they're at 5, the rest of us are gonna have to be kind of proactive about trying to funnel information to them on our own that we think might be relevant, especially as working in these other committees. We're gonna come across in each of the other committees, like funding. Woody might come across something that would be really interesting about legislation or education or outreach. Put it in that folder, send it to Alan. Same thing on transportation. Let's start building those resources for them.
We also have Zeno as an asset. Zeno, there you are, and I see you've posted in the chat about Oakland's, what is it called, equity checklist, similar to what Jerry was talking about earlier in this meeting. And so Zeno is our Climate Action Advisory Committee member regionally.
So Alan, do you see that document? And can I request that you put that into a folder for us, an equity folder for the Social Equity Committee?
Sorry about that. I was having some issues, but yes, I should be able to do that.
Okay. All right.
I just have a clarifying question I wanted to ask real quick. So let's just say, because it sounds like the outreach and education committee is going to be the most challenging in terms of making sure we don't have quorum. So, but if I'm communicating directly with Kenna, for instance, right, and we're not communicating about, with all the other members of the education group, is that still considered quorum?
Yes. Because now
Oh,
you're going to take Kenna's information back to your committee. I mean, the perception, regardless, is going to be that you've done that. But I suppose if you don't share anything that she shared with you, then that's not a problem. But why would you be reaching out to her unless you wanted to share it? So no, you have to stick with
Right.
your group of 5 other than in the scheduled meetings. But let's take a look at that. I mean, honestly, Alex, there's only 2 weeks until the next Climate Action Committee. You guys have a lot of work to do even within your 5, but here you're looking at Kenna. Kenna is already processing, okay, what documents am I going to be sending off to Alan that he can share? I mean, all of us need to be doing this.
Right.
Sorry.
No problem. Just want to clarify. I just don't want to break the rules, so I appreciate it. Thank you for clarifying.
I see hands from Lisa and Luke, and I'm also noticing that we're running out of time on the larger agenda. So hoping we can wrap this subject soon. Lisa, please.
So last week I sent out a letter about the Title 24 state regulations and I sent it to Kenna and Alan and I think Sarah and Diana. I'm still not totally clear what to do with that now. Should I send it to Alan and he can put it in the library and for all of you to look it over to see if it's okay? Yes? Okay, that's what I'll do. Thank you.
If it's a discussion
We
item-
already have it on the agenda for next time.
And Alan, I assume it's already, it'll be kind of available for people to see.
So I guess the question is the intention for it to be like a discussion item to be brought at a meeting, or is it just to have as a resource as something to see?
It would be a discussion item because I just was hoping for people to be able to see it. And is this okay with you if we forward this on to the council? So
we can upload it to the website, but if it's a discussion item, it's probably best to kind of save it for the agenda and include it as.
So not send it out in advance to people to look over.
Yeah, if it's going to be a discussion, it's best that we do in the public forum.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But you would send it out with the announcement for the meeting, wouldn't you not?
Correct.
So we get to see it. And,
Right.
At least I have a question. Did you want us then, after reading it, to form an opinion and then send it to the council suggesting something? In which case, Alan needs to state it differently. It's more than a discussion.
Well, I did a draft. So it's just something that can be changed, or maybe people don't even want to send it at all. I just kind of wanted to put it out there, get the ball rolling.
I think it's going to be on the agenda, and it's a letter that she would like input on, and she'd like approval, endorsement from this committee that it be forwarded on to the city council. That's what I understood her agenda item to be. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
she'll want to attach that document to the agenda, and it'll be made public for public disclosure.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Just a clarification. So that's what the reason I asked that question was that if we wanted to do an action on it, then it needs to be stated that way. Is there someplace in our agenda where we just have discussions as well and there is no action?
So in the regular agenda items, we can have items that have actions or that are just for discussion or updates.
All right, thanks.
Typically, there'll be an attachment or something like that, or something stating an actions required or encouraged.
Luke and Zeno.
So, well, first, I'll suggest that we'll open it up to public comment pretty soon here. But I just wanted to say in regard to the Education and Outreach Committee, I would say as much as you can, please don't feel held back by an inability to communicate with the chair group. And I hope that all of the resources that we send you can kind of just be the wind beneath your Brown Act verified wings, and you can just go and I just want to say, I hope that for all of our committees, that we really feel like, we're, not holding ourselves to too high of a standard. That
Uh-oh.
You froze. There you are. You're back.
every time, I don't know, anytime I'm really getting into it, I freeze. But I just want to say, just as much as you can, just throw things at the wall, see what sticks, come back, report back. And I also just wanted to check with everyone. Does everyone feel confident in sort of next steps? Do you feel like your working group has a clear sense of purpose in this, first movement? And do you feel like you have everything you need to make an informal report back at our next meeting? And so if there's no further discussion, just in the interest of time, I'm going to suggest public comment, or hand it back to Joshua first.
Well, just to say, Zeno had a comment.
Yeah, so two things. So before I say anything, I really appreciate everybody's getting so together and getting organized and all the work you already have put in this. I mentioned in the chat also that I would think like there's this new website called Townsea that is replacing Wacko BB, and that could be an ideal way to reach out to the community rather than just within the committee. So I would really recommend something and contacting Laura Hager, and maybe she can become like an expert associated with the working group on outreach and education. The other thing is that, I have a senior moment. I had another thing. Yeah, so I was concerned. So, you talked about the Brown Act and how to stay within the Brown Act, but I also like you to consider the intent of the Brown Act is to create transparency. Right, and the transparency is not just the absence of opaqueness. Transparency is an active thing, and so by creating all these working groups, in a way, you create a bit of an untransparency. And so I think you would want to consider how these working groups are transparent to the community. So that is my suggestion, that you kind of think about how to make this whole structure that you're creating for your group, which I think is great. How can you further transparency in town of Sebastopol around these working groups that support the committee? Thank you.
All right, and just to refresh on that point, our expectation is that working groups are for a large part about research and development, and that any substantial actions or resolutions shall be presented to and approved by our whole working committee in a publicly transparent way. And I'm sure that these bumps will work themselves out as we move down the road. Diana.
Yeah, just a quick question. What do we think about listing on the website our working groups and the membership of those working groups, so that then if members of the public wanted to reach out to Alan to get in touch with the working groups or to share information, at least there'd be, people would look at the website and go, oh, okay, these are these people that are on these working groups. Is that something that's worthwhile? They're kind of short term, so I don't know that that's really worth setting up, just putting it out there.
Let's perhaps ask if anybody has objections or reservations about that prospect of just listing the working groups. Kenna.
Well, I just have a suggestion, is that maybe I really like the questions, really appreciate you bringing it to be thinking about the transparency as an active, we should be active participants in that. And maybe we send it to the work groups to think about in the next 2 weeks of, what would the different work groups kind of come up with as their preferred method, and come back with that being part of our work group reports. And we discuss it, after we've thought about it a little bit. I mean, I have no objection to putting lists on the website, but some of the committees it's just that may be more maintenance than it's worth. or listing, we'll have a list of them without the membership, and Alan could forward as he sees fit, but some form of transparency does seem important, and, just not just transparency, but welcoming and, active inclusion as an action.
Dana?
Yeah, I also see this as a real great, we talked about, you want people to know. Well, I think the Education and Outreach Committee should talk about this, because it seems like there's an opportunity for visibility too. What's this Climate Action Committee doing? And you have all of these subcommittees doing a lot. So yeah, fine. I mean, we're going to be meeting again in 2 weeks. Why don't we just get input at that point? Sounds good.
Okay, anything else, or can we move from working groups towards CAP for the brief moment of time that we have left? Back to you, Luke.
Excellent, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to item 6C, the Climate Action Plan update discussion. With some limited time on the rest of the agenda, I want to first off just ask Jerry if you might, since I think you were going to take a bit of the lead on this discussion, if it might be worthwhile to continue it, given we have the Planning Department report and action items as well, but I'll defer to you for thoughts on that.
That's fine. We can do that. Just an outline. I did send out to Kenna when she asked me if I would help lead that, the list of things and the sequence that I would follow. Before we put the Sunnyvale cap together, I actually reviewed about 15 different caps. So, our cap here is about 20 pages long. The Sunnyvale cap is about 120 pages long. It's very specific, and it is a working document that the city council actually uses every day. And I hope everybody is signed up, not necessarily for 120 pages, but my intention in working on the cap and the metrics is to have a working document that the city council can use every day, the same way they use zoning and the same way they use the general plan. And it would follow the same kind of pattern that the general plan follows. That is goals, policies, and actions. So it'll be an easy document for them to use, and they won't have to interpret it. They'll have a specification that they can use from that time forward.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Is there any further questions or discussion on this item, or objection to continuing it to a future meeting for further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 7, Planning Department report.
All right, so I actually do not have any updates for the Climate Action Committee at this time, so that's what I got. So, it looks like Stina may have a question.
Okay, yeah, with that, so I want to actually go back and reopen item 6C for public comment. So if there's any public comment at this time.
Yeah, I have a comment. So this is kind of motivated by an action of the Planning Commission of Novato yesterday, who approved a huge filling station of Costco, I think 28 pumps. The issue that it raises is they had a emergency resolution, but this planning commission didn't feel at all instructed by that emergency resolution. So it kind of pertained to this agenda item in the sense that the question for me is, to what extent our planning commission, our design and review board, etc., aware that we have a new direction in climate protection? Are they instructed in any way to touch on certain things that they may not have touched on in that detail in the past? Or is it just business as usual for the Planning Commission, and it only would come up at City Council level? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zeno, for your public comment. Any response from committee? Sarah?
I would answer Zeno that the planning director, staff to the Planning Commission, and Ellen, staff to DRB, and this group has advised both bodies, those bodies, of the emergency climate reso and all that work. That being said, I think it would be really important if everybody had like a 5-question checklist, like Jerry was saying earlier about the equity checklist. Like, let's put it on all documents, everything we do, let's put it right in front every time. So we have to go through that lens. We just have to go through the climate action, climate emergency lens, whatever decision we're making, because it comes up in almost every decision.
Yes,
So
Jerry?
there's never enough training. There's never enough awareness. There's never enough insistence. We can always do more and do better. That's my view.
Yeah, and the place where the rubber meets the road is basically if you're on the planning commission. If you're on the planning commission or you're on a council, staff comes in with a report, says such and such is here. This is what we've said in the past, and they have the citations of number such and such A.1 says blah, 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 okay? And this is what we said we wanted to do. Do we still want to do that? I mean, you can always say no, but you do make the statement and you do measure things by that. And you know when you go outside the guidelines.
Thank you. Any further, Woody?
Yeah, thanks. Real quick, I just wanted to thank Zeno for bringing this up. It is a critically important issue, that disconnect. And I think that, you know, the notion of just sort of sending a memo or whatever, keep this on your front desk or whatever, that's not really enough, because, you know, I think what Jerry was just getting to is that the planning department is bound to go by the rules. And so if the rules allow a certain use, you know, then that they can't go against that. So that staff report would say they hit that checklist, they hit that, you know, the check boxes and all that. So I think if and when the city council and, you know, imposes a moratorium or whatever on fossil fuel infrastructure in general, looking at all those existing really out of date now you know, permitting rules and codes that allow for certain uses need to be re-examined. And gas stations is just a real obvious one, I think, but there might be others.
Thank you, Woody. Anyone else? Okay, with that, we'll close this item and move it back to Joshua for action items.
Certainly, thank you, Luke. So in terms of action items, aside from the announcements about the Bike to It campaign, the Walk to It campaign, and the Mobility Action Plan workshop, just for those who are interested to follow up on those, our primary action items are for each working group to meet in between now and the next full committee meeting, which is to say 2 weeks from today. Here is the list of the working groups one more time, along with the people who said that they would, for the moment, take point on organizing that interim meeting. So first, funding. Lisa was going to get that meeting together. Research, Luke is going to get that meeting together. Outreach and education, Alex, get that together. Microgrids and energy, Kenna is organizing that one. Transportation, Luke, again, I believe. Is that correct? Okay. CAP and metrics, Jerry is organizing that meeting. Sequestration, I will be organizing that meeting. And social equity, Diana. Any questions or concerns on that front, or is everybody whose name I read okay with that as an action item? All right.
I had a comment. This may have been asked before. I have a personal Zoom account. I'm on Zoom way too much. But is everyone who is organizing these meetings, do they have Zoom accounts? And Alan, a question to you, to the extent that they don't have Zoom accounts that would accommodate these meetings, do we have a Zoom account available for committee use?
So that's a good question. And I don't believe that we do. As a matter of fact, I'm actually using Carrie's account to host these meetings.
So is everyone who's organizing the Zoom meetings, do all of you have Zoom accounts to use? Does anyone need help with a Zoom account? No.
Not have a Zoom account. I was just going to ask somebody Is it going to cost me any significant amounts of money, or is it just something I can sign up for?
It
Um,
is,
I'll add that it gives you a 40-minute time limit if there's 3 people or more. But the thing that they don't tell you is you can just close it and reopen it, and it works 99% of the time.
so Josh, I do have a paid Zoom account, which just gives you unlimited time. I think that's really all it does. And then you can record the meetings. But it's $15.50 a month. But the free one, as Luke said, you can just kind of, sometimes they'll just let you keep doing the meeting. So.
Right. Well, if Diana, perhaps I could arrange for the meeting time independent of that. And then once the meeting time is set, if I could perhaps call on you for the link. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I'd be happy to be your Zoom meeting set up. So yes, you would
Great.
send me the request. I'd set up the Zoom meeting. I'd send you the link and make you the host, and then you just move with it.
Thanks for bringing that up. Much appreciated. Okay, congratulations, everyone. We got a whole bunch done.
Ooh, can I report out on something quickly? I just realized we haven't reported out that the City Council, in fact, changed the official name of this committee to committee. So it is now the Climate Action Committee. And the slot that Sarah is occupying, which had been labeled simply as the City Council alternate, is now specifically allocated to the City Council's appointee to the Regional Climate Protection Agency, which is the position she holds. So just an administrative report out.
And we made it parallel to the Zero Waste Committee.
That's it.
Well, any other further comments or questions before we adjourn from the committee?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that unfortunately on March 10th, I have a conflict and I can only be in the meeting for the first half hour. So I can be on for the first half hour, and I don't know, maybe if whatever I need to say could be front loaded, that might work, but sorry, need to leave early.
Thank you, Woody. And also just going forward, if anyone's going to be absent from a meeting, if you could just send me an email in advance, just that way we can know she is being excused. We appreciate that. All right.
Great. Well, seeing nothing else, we're adjourned.
I guess.